July 20th, 1949. Last night, a lady doctor saw the Maharshi's wound and privately told some of us that there was nothing to congratulate ourselves for, as the tumor was still present and that what had fallen off was only the cauliflower excrescences which had been necrosed by the caustic herb applications. July 31st. Faith in the herbalist has completely waned. The tumor has increased in size, and Bhagavan's health has greatly deteriorated with a daily rise of temperature in the evening and loss of appetite. On the 25th, Dr. Guru Swami, the famous diagnostic physician of Madras, came and saw the wound. He expressed great dissatisfaction at the way the case had been handled, at the radium treatment, and at the application of caustic herbs. He prescribed injections, the first of which was given on the 28th night. This morning, 8 doctors were counted in the ashram. Some more arrived at noon for a big medical consultation. Bhagavan is cheerful and jovial as ever, although his health is much worse than yesterday. Seeing Krishnamurti sitting in the first row next to a great devotee, Balaram Reddyar, he exclaimed in surprise, "Ah, what a coincidence! He is the radiologist, always reminds me of Balaram. Same complexion, same hair, same features, and now they are sitting side by side. Balarama is the elder brother of Sri Krishna, and this Balarama is older than this Krishnamurti," and laughed heartily. For some days the Brahmin priest of the ashram had been daily performing a special puja and Surya Namaskar, sun worship, for Maharshi's recovery. Today Maharshi remarked, "What is the use of all this? The spirit which is in the sun is here and everywhere." At about 3 p.m., all the doctors assembled for consultation. Sri Maharshi, in his usual compassion, wanted the 2 devotee homeopaths also to be called. They were called just to satisfy the letter of his wish, as no doctor except one took any notice of them. In the night, one of them was taken to task for having administered a single homeopathic dose to Sri Maharshi earlier in the afternoon. August 2nd, 1949. Because of evening fever, Maharshi has been given 4 penicillin injections aggregating 1 million units, which stopped it since 2 days. Yesterday's orders were issued that in view of his extreme weakness, the maximum rest and comfort should be given to Sri Maharshi. Disciples were therefore requested to attend only 1 hour in the morning and 1 in the evening for usual Parayanam, Veda recital, so that after 9:30 a.m. the doors were closed, which Maharshi did not notice. But when, at 3:30 p.m., he saw the doors still closed and came to learn of the new orders, he rebelled and commanded that they should be immediately opened. He argued, "Many people come from great distances for darshan and cannot wait till evening. They must not be disappointed. Secondly, if the doors remain closed, people will suspect something serious and the whole town will flock. Thirdly, if you pin the devotees to only these hours, the time may not suit some of them, who will be greatly inconvenienced," etc. The doors remained open, but the devotees were privately requested not to cause him discomfort by their presence, which most of them obeyed. Today, being Tuesday as well as a Hindu festival, a constant stream of villagers continued to flow in the hall to prostrate and to go out for pradakshina round the sacred Arunachala hill. Today also the hall remained open as usual, but the devotees attended only the 2 specific hours, with the exception of the very few who were immune to persuasion. The bell of the temple remained silent this evening. 7th August. Although tomorrow will be full moon and therefore Maharshi's shaving day, yesterday he was given the shave. From yesterday Parayanam also stopped, and with it the admission of the disciples into the hall. Visitors alone could enter, prostrate, and go out immediately. Disciples could prostrate outside the hall. Last night, Surgeon Raghavachari arrived. Before him arrived all the necessary instruments, blood plasma, etc., for today's operation. At 7 a.m. today, Dr. Guru Swami also arrived by car. Sri Maharshi walked to the dispensary very early in the morning to be prepared for operation. He was given an injection in the left shoulder of a new anesthetic of the Novocaine family and also one of amnopan, an alkaloid of opium, to keep him half asleep and to deaden the pain of the operation. The operation is to be bloodless, to the use of a diathermic knife, which is not actually a knife but a blunted needle controlled by electricity. The needle merely moves over the flesh required to be cut, and the electric current does the actual cutting, simultaneously with the singeing of the blood vessels so as to cause immediate clotting, with the result that neither bleeding nor infection takes place. At about 8:15 a.m., the operation proper started. The surgeon took great care not to leave a single morbid cell in the wound. He had thus cut very deep without interfering with the ulnar nerve. The operation lasted about 2.5 hours. Then the arm was put in plaster of Paris, tightly bandaged. A little after the beginning of the operation, Sri Maharshi had labored breathing, which frightened the surgeon, who stopped a while and started giving blood transfusion. 2 bottles of plasma brought in advance did not prove sufficient, so that fresh blood was taken from the radiologist and others, some of which was mixed with the plasma and some given as it is. In all, he was given 250 cc plasma and 650 cc of fresh blood. From 8 a.m., devotees started pouring from South India and from the town, so that by 10:30 constables and special volunteers had to control the crowd. All approaches to the dispensary were closed, and sentries were posted at them. Numerous doctors crowded the dispensary or rushed in and out of it on one mission or other till about 10:45, when Sri Niranjanananda Swami came out with Dr. Guru Swami and told the anxious crowd that the operation is highly successful, but Bhagan must have full rest today and must not be approached. Devotees may kindly disperse now. Tomorrow they have his darshan if the doctors will permit. The crowd gradually melted, but started gathering again at about 5 p.m. Having received the news that a large number of devotees were anxious to see how he was, Sri Maharshi insisted that he should walk to the darshan hall, which dismayed the doctors, but with difficulty he eventually agreed to a compromise to be placed on the veranda of the dispensary and there give darshan. The bhaktas arranged themselves in a queue and filed past him with only a bow. Prostration was not allowed for lack of time and space. August 9, 1949. Yesterday, Sri Maharshi felt very uncomfortable with the plaster of Paris sticking to his flesh. He felt a great itching sensation in the wound, but the plaster was too thick to make an impression when massaged. At 11:30 a.m., the plaster was removed, and at 12:45 afternoon, the Maharshi suddenly rose and went down the dispensary steps towards the darshan hall. The attending doctors were flabbergasted, rushed to him with folded hands, and tried their best to take him back to his bed in the dispensary, at least up to 4:45, but it was of no avail. He tottered to the new bathroom, and thence to the darshan hall. At 5:15, people were allowed to enter from the east door, prostrate, and walk straight out by the south door. This morning, although Maharshi's temperature was normal, and he was feeling better, no one was allowed to enter the hall even for mere prostration. This had to be made outside the south door, which remained open with a sliding collapsible door drawn across it, to which devotees could see him facing them without being able to enter. The offerings table, which usually stands near the couch, was today placed outside the south door, so that flower and fruit offerings may be deposited on it. Penicillin injections are being administered to prevent sepsis. At 5 p.m., Dr. P. Rama Rao, the Madras radiologist, came and stuck radium needles in a wax and molded it over Maharshi's wound and bandaged the arm with plaster of Paris, so that even if the hand moved, the radium mold would not be disturbed. He applied it with mathematical accuracy, the larger and more powerful needles in the center, the smaller and weaker ones towards both ends of the mold. The radium needles are encased in gold containers. The first and second, most potent needles are deadly, and although encased in hard gold, they are handled only with a pair of tongs. The age of each needle is estimated to be between 200 and 400 years. The healing process has not yet started, although 7 days have already passed since the operation day, due, it is said, to the Maharshi's low vitality. August 15th, 1949. In honor of the Independence Day, attendant Krishnaswamy today opened the doors of the hall and let people in for prostration only on his own responsibility. At 5:40 a.m., Dr. Shankar Rao, the ashram doctor, removed the radium mold and found healthy granulations in the epithelium, which is the sign of healing. Confidence of complete cure is entertained if no growth will reappear within a month. The doors of the hall remained open only for prostration since the 15th. Sri Maharshi's food is given to him on a table placed level with his couch in the darshan hall. He continues to think of the devotees who may be missing him at mealtime. Yesterday he inquired, "When am I to have my food in the dining hall with the others?" About 3:30 p.m., Dr. Rama Rao came from Madras with his family, saw the wound and said that no prognosis could be made before 3 weeks had elapsed. August 24th. This evening the Parayanam, stopped since a few weeks, is resumed and will continue henceforward. Sri Bhagavan's health permitting, morning and evening as before, during which devotees are allowed to sit in the hall. For the first time since the 6th of August, the big bell in the ashram temple rang this evening during puja. Sri Maharshi looks well and walks fast enough, but to my eyes he looks much thinner than before the last operation. Sometimes he jokes with the attendants. The pain which he has been feeling during and before the radium application is subsiding, relieved to some extent by the hot water bottles applied. Since some days a baby leopard is brought to the ashram in the evening and taken to Maharshi, who pats and looks intently at it. The Sarvadhikari is very fond of it and expresses his love by slapping it hard on the back and then rewards it with 3 cups of milk, which it avidly laps like a cat. August 27th. Maharshi's wound, which has been clean and healing for some days, started sloughing again. At 4:30 p.m., Dr. Raghavachari and his assistants closed the hall for about 1.5 hours and removed a small quantity of the slough, which they took with them for examination in Madras. Sri Maharshi's emaciation in the neck and legs is daily increasing. August 29th, 1949. Sri Maharshi composed a verse in Tamil over which an English lady devotee grew very jubilant and looked forward to reading it in English translation, taking it to be a hymn in praise of the Lord of creation. It turned out to be a laxative recipe, which Maharshi had written with his own hand in 10 long lines. Bhagavan is bubbling with joy over it and is showing it to everybody like a schoolboy who has written his first poem. September 11th. Today is the last of the 48 days of the Surya Namaskar prayer, recommended by Dr. Guruswami for the recovery of Sri Maharshi's health. Every day it has been read in the ashram's Vedapatasala by special Brahmins. But today being the closing day, it has been recited in the hall immediately after the usual daily prayer and has taken 2 hours to finish. 7:40 to 9:40 a.m. It consists of 132 hymns taken from the Yajur Veda. We immensely enjoyed listening to it. It has sweet rhythm and has been read with fervor in well-synchronizing voices by 7 Brahman youths led by their teacher. Sri Bhagavan looks better and the wound is said to be healing, though very slowly, which raised our hopes for a complete recovery. Probably the uplifting tunes of the Ayurveda recitation has something to do with this optimism. September 24th. The old Muraliyar lady, Pati, who had been daily serving Maharshi with rice cooked in her own house and at her own expense for 40 years, passed away at about midnight. As soon as the news of her death reached Sri Maharshi, he started talking about her and went on the whole day telling her story from 1908, 1 year after the Achamal came, when she first came to him in Virupaksha cave, upwards, and how she stuck to him all these years, with unflagging devotion and wholehearted service. He inquired about the place of her burial, and when told that it would be in the Hindu general burial ground, he said that it should be placed where she died. His order had to be obeyed, and a pit was dug within that compound which is not far from the ashram proper. Her body was made to sit cross-legged in yoga asana, as it is customarily done to the bodies of sannyasis, then garlanded with flowers and sprinkled with sacred ash and camphor and finally buried for final rest. October 15th. Maharshi is suffering great pain from stiffness and rheumatism in the left knee, for which a Brahmin devotee has given him homeopathic doses of magnesia fus. Internally and fomentation. He is walking with difficulty. In order to give him easy access to the bathroom at night, and to spare him crossing of the high threshold of the hall, which has become a veritable nightmare, his bed from tonight on will be placed in the tiny room adjoining the bathroom, which has so far been used for storing the linen of his sofa and other objects personally used by him. October 20th. Yusuf Meher Ali, the chairman of the Socialist Party of India, who has spent here 13 days for recuperation and rest in the proximity of the Maharshi, left today, November 15th, 1949. Today being full moon, Sri Maharshi has had his shave as usual. There has been no pariyanam in the hall in the evening, but a big puja in the temple because of an important Hindu festival. After the holy lingam was plastered with a cooked rice and arati about to be performed, Sri Bhagavan was made to sit on a chair placed over the stone lotus in the center of the hall, directly facing the Holy of Holies. The devotees squatted on both sides of him on the floor. During arati, Sri Bhagavan was completely indrawn, as he almost always is on religious occasions. Arati over, he was helped back to his couch a few feet away. This is Dipam Day, the full moon of the month of Kartikai, most holy to Hindus in the south. The holy beacon will be lighted tonight on the top of Arunachala, the hill of fire which symbolizes the light of the Spirit in all hearts and in the universe. Arunachala, another name of Shiva, enthralled Sri Maharshi 53 years ago, when he was a mere youth in his teens, and made him substance of his substance, and indistinguishable from his essence. Arunachala, a mere hill of stones, remained for him the blissful universal self and the living Guru, both in one. Every year since the foundation of this ashram, this day has been celebrated in it with illumination, prayers, reading of the Vedas, and devotional songs, followed by distribution of several kinds of prasadam. Tonight, Sri Maharshi sat in the north veranda of the darshan hall, from where he could directly see the top of the hill. All around him, hundreds of devotees squatted, some on the cement veranda, but the majority on the sandy ground. Not far from his sofa stood the large brass vessel, 3/4 filled with pure ghee, surmounted by a thick wick, ready to be lighted at the right moment as the ashram beacon, making a sacred triangle with those of the hill and with the big Arunachaleswara temple. But this jubilation is not without a sting. Will the help of Sri Maharshi favor us with another Dipam day? and be with us in flesh? Or is this to be the last? As we see him seated, fresh and bright as ever, gazing expectantly at the top of his beloved Arunachala, we cannot help being optimistic of his recovery. The body, which is stricken by a most malignant disease, hacked on many occasions by the surgeon's knife, burnt by radium, and drugged by all sorts of powerful drugs, bears no trace of the agonizing ordeal in the brilliance of its eyes or in the joyful expression of its face. What miracles are being performed in it? What are its mysteries? 10 minutes before sunset, the time for lighting the Deepam, Sri Naranjananda Swami came on the scene. With bare breast and fresh from his bath, and the Shaiva marks prominently drawn on his arms, chest, and forehead, he stood by the side of the ghee basin and received the ghee offerings brought mostly by the lady devotees and poured them into the ghee vessel. A minute or two before 6, the flame suddenly leapt up on the top of the hill, and our ashram flame immediately followed it, accompanied by the reading of RAMANA, after which the series of chanting, singing, etc. began. Maharshi's health is fairly normal, but he needs to be lifted up when he slides down on his sofa, and supported when he stands or begins to walk. This is due not only to muscular weakness, but also to the stiffness of his knee and hip joints, as well as to his inability to use the left arm. He can use only the left fingers, if no movement of the elbow is involved. About 10 days ago, he paid a visit to the storeroom opposite the back door of the kitchen to see for himself its renovated veranda. When he looked up and saw over the door of the storeroom a design of Arunachala Hill with the beacon lighted over it in cement, he grew reminiscent and told the attendants that it was a copy of the original design which he had drawn on paper more than 12 years earlier. All the workers were happy at his visit because he was able to walk about 60 yards both ways. December 13th, 1944. Surgeon Raghavachari came yesterday at 2 p.m., saw the tumor, and ordered his staff to make all the necessary arrangements for operation, which he fixed for Sunday, the 18th. Sri Maharshi asked him what would happen if the tumor were to be left to itself, and he answered that it would grow exceedingly large and would create all sorts of constitutional disturbances and complications, adding, "Now that it is no bigger than a small lime, it can be easily removed." Sri Maharshi nowadays dozes a lot, and the rheumatism of his knee has grown so bad that almost all the time 2 attendants massage his legs and thighs. His food is not nourishing, and he often refuses the extra dishes and fruits. Monday, December 19th. Yesterday, the ashram dispensary was made ready for the operation, which was to take place yesterday, but was postponed to today. And this morning at about 5:30, Sri Maharshi walked slowly into it. At about 6:15, before Rahu Kalam, the operation started and continued till about 7:30. But the doctors came out only at about 9:30, after having given him blood transfusion of 400 cc, mostly from fresh blood. December 21st. Sri Maharshi is still in the dispensary, and devotees are given only half an hour to file past him morning and evening, just time enough to bow and move off. He looked very pallid and languid. I understand that last night anodyne and sleeping draughts were administered to him to make him comfortable, but no precise information is being given and no bulletin issued. It is reported that the surgeon had warned the authorities that all that could be done for the Maharshi had been done by his system of medicine, and that they were now free to do for him, the Maharshi, what they thought best, which greatly disturbed the devotees, and set each of them to think of his or her pet doctor and specialist to take up the case, but none dared to suggest it. Thus a cloud of pessimism and despair hung heavily over the hearts of the devotees. Many ladies, seeing Sri Bhagavan's depleted health, returned from the darshan with tears streaming down their cheeks. Everyone asked the question, what is to be done now? December 23rd. The anxiety over Maharshi's health has considerably increased, and the pent-up feeling of the devotees has run so high that yesterday it found expression in the cry, "Homeopathy," from many of them. The clamorers marched to the office and after a long conference sent a telegram at the dead of night to the veteran homeopath in South India, Sri T.S. Iyer, requesting him to take up the case. At 7 p.m., attendant Rangaswamy, with sleepy eyes and tired look, told me that Sri Maharshi's pain was greater and his vitality much lower now than after the last operation. He added, 4 people at a time now have to keep awake the whole night to lift him down to his feet from his couch when he wants to go to the bathroom, as he is not used to a bedpan. Bhagan hardly sleeps or eats, for as soon as he eats his rice, which is his staple diet, he immediately brings it out. All he eats is some fruit juice, an apple, and a little pepper water. We almost do not want to sleep at all. What to do? The wound is now very big, covering nearly the whole upper arm. December 24, 1949. T.S. Iyer, the homeopath, arrived early morning and talked with the Maharshi for 1 full hour in the dispensary. Sri Bhagavan was very gracious to him and answered all his questions, a thing he rarely does. He always respects persons older than himself. T.S. Iyer started the treatment with calendula, an external application, and tomorrow he will give internal medicines. December 26. Dr. Raghavachari came today, saw the Maharshi, and had a talk with the homeopath, after which he left back for Madras. From yesterday, Maharshi started eating rice without discomfort. Evening and morning darshan continues, now increased to 1 hour each time. January 2nd, 1950. At about 9 o'clock last night, Sri Maharshi quietly slipped out of the dispensary to his tiny bedroom, where he spent the night. Today, instead of going to the darshan hall as before, he ordered his sofa to be placed outside this small room in the passage and gave darshan from 9 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 6 p.m., without the usual Veda Parayanam. In the evening, the attendance was heavy, as devotees began to collect for Maharshi's birthday, which this year falls on the 5th. All the wide verandas and spaces facing the Maharshi were packed, which made meditation there very difficult. The squeeze was such that the overflow of lady devotees had to seek sitting accommodation down below in the coconut grove, from where they could see Sri Bhagavan. The master appears weak and strained from moving up and down the sofa. 3 attendants have to support him from the breeches, so that the left hand may not move nor be touched. Yet he struggles hard to push himself through the very narrow space between the wall and the sofa, to and from the bathroom. January 5th. Today is Jayanti, Sri Maharshi's 70th birthday. It has been rumored that the Sarvadhikari is going to request him to go to the big hall for the celebration and arati on account of the great gathering of devotees. We were worried over it, fearing lest the crossing of the forbidding threshold should prove the last straw. But to our relief we found him this morning, giving darshan in the usual passage. He sat from 9 to 10:30, when arati was brought out. For the first time in the history of the ashram, Maharshi today did not have his Jayanti meal along with the devotees. His stiff knees did not permit him to squat on the floor. Secondly, he was on special diet, free from chilies, tamarind, garlic, onions, etc., as ordered by the homeopath. In the afternoon he gave darshan from 3 to 6 o'clock, i.e. 2 hours longer than usual, in order not to disappoint sadhakas who had come from long distances. January 8th. Sri Maharshi's health is reported to be well enough to justify an increase by half an hour in the darshan time to 1.5 hours twice a day from tomorrow. He was rather ruffled this afternoon by a small incident when he found himself left alone in the bathroom with none by his side to help him. He came out and rebuked the attendants for showing diligent attention to his person in the presence of others, whereas in private they abandoned him and asked them not to crowd around him any more for this show. Old disciples knew that he did not mean to deny the complete devotion and ungrudging service they all gave to his beloved person, but simply intended to keep them on their toes. January 20th, 1950. The Veda Parayanam, which stopped on the 19th December, started again today. Not near the Maharshi as before, but inside the temple, the sound of which reached us on the east veranda where we faced the Maharshi. February 8th. Homeopathic treatment is continuing with Thuja in the 30th potency, followed by Nux Vomica for costiveness. Since the 6th, a single dose of Thuja, 1,000th, was given to Maharshi, a third dose every morning, the last of which today. Since yesterday, he has been feeling some discomfort near as well as some thickening of the flesh around the wound, which frightened the authorities, but which the homeopath declared to be an aggravation from the high-powered dose, which would disappear within a week. The Sarvadhikari asked the English disciple, who had led the clamors for homeopathy, to be present henceforward at the dressing every morning. February 12th. General Bhatia, Surgeon General of Madras State, who came on inspection duty to Tiruvannamalai, called at the ashram at about 10 a.m. at the request of a friend and saw the wound. He did not like the swelling and recommended penicillin, which he thought would dissipate it if it were an inflammatory process. At any rate, he remarked, we should know what it is. Dr. Shankar Rao, the attendant physician, appraised the homeopath in charge of the case of the general's advice, but the latter turned it down on the ground that it might be an aggravation from his dose of Thuja 1000, which must not be interfered with. February 14th. A new growth is now appreciably perceptible just below the spot operated on the 19th December. Which the homeopath persists in diagnosing as a swelling due to his strong dose, which will soon subside, leading to complete cure. The homeopath will leave on the 16th to the hills and will keep a homeopath friend to look after the case. February 15th. Dr. Raghavachari came before noon, closely examined the new swelling, and declared it to be sarcoma again. The pain has greatly increased, so much so that the slightest touch of the hand causes Maharshi to wince. A conference of the doctors, Sarvadhikari, and some devotees was called, in which the attention of TSI was drawn to the surgeon's verdict. Whilst not denying the reappearance, TSI reiterated his faith in a possible cure if his homeopathy were allowed to continue. A second conference was held in the evening, which also ended inconclusively. February 17th. Before TSI left yesterday, Mr. R. Ayer, the succeeding homeopath, started his treatment with 1 dose of Silica 30 to be repeated once a day. February 25th, 1950. Yesterday, homeopathy was declared a failure and altogether stopped. The Moose, the Malabari Vaidya, doctor of Unani medicine, who had been called and had arrived on the 21st, immediately took charge and started with an external application followed by a laxative. Dr. Shankar Rao remained the attending physician. He proved extremely valuable in cooperating with any system of medicine and with any doctor appointed by the ashram authorities. He does his work with genuine humility, utter devotion, and calmness. February 27th. The tumor started bleeding, which the Moose ascribed to his medicines, driving out all the morbid matter from Bhagavan's system, to use his words. March 6th. Sri Bhagavan's health is visibly deteriorating. The tumor has rapidly increased in size. March 14th. The tumor has rapidly increased in size and the pain and severity. Although the Moose continued to treat, he has admitted to his failure to cure or even to alleviate the pain. Dr. Shankar Rao has given an anodyne to relieve the pain. The blood test taken 2 days ago showed only 58% of hemoglobins, indicating severe anemia. But with all this, Sri Bhagavan's face remains bright, calm, and serene. Not a sigh, not a grimace of suffering, not a shadow of fear or restlessness mars the repose of his countenance or the luster of his eyes. He remains in his usual splendor, poise, and grace. Even the peace which has all along radiated from him continues to be powerfully felt. A newcomer looking at him would not suspect that such a virulent disease was inside that graceful body, sapping its life away by the minute. March 17th. On the 15th, Dr. Raghavachari and 2 other doctors came, saw the condition of Maharshi, and gave a written report, which the ashram authorities quickly locked up in the iron safe, which led to the presumption that it contained a bad prognosis. Since some days reports of Sri Maharshi's deteriorating health have been appearing in the Madras press, especially in the English daily, The Hindu. Maharshi's temperature for some days has been standing at about 100. His normal is around 97.5. His systole today is 98, pulse high, heart has rapid action, perhaps hypertrophied, with ankle swelling, and the growth continues to expand. March 20th. The Tamil radio and press broadcast of Maharshi's illness in Madras and Bombay caused yesterday a large influx of anxious visitors and devotees from all over the south, amounting to about 1,000. Among them was Sir C.P. Ramaswamy Iyer, the former Dewan of Travancore, who carried for Sri Bhagavan a garland of beautiful roses of a man's size. A Bengali devotee brought the good news from his competent astrologer that Sri Maharshi would live at least till July 1953, if not for another 12 years, as his disease was not a malignant tumor, but a rheumatic inflammation, for which he recommended a certain Baswa Siddha medicine which the devotee himself could secure in its absolute purity from his own great Kaviraj, a Siddha doctor, specialist in Ayurveda, in Calcutta. But the moose, still in charge of the case, refused to administer it, suggesting patience for another 4 days, at the end of which the Kaviraj might be called to administer it himself, if Maharshi's health would not have improved by then. Some disciples supported one side, some the other, with the result that the basma was not given. In the meantime, the case had become almost unmanageable, and the weakness excessive. Yesterday morning, while going to the bathroom, Maharshi tottered and fell. His attendants, having been unaware of his increased ability, continued to behave as before and failed to support him when he walked. Luckily, it was a mild fall and did not have adverse after effects. March 24th, 1950. Yesterday evening, suddenly Maharshi's temperature rose to 101.6. His pulse likewise rose. The heart's murmur was heard all over the chest, and the smell from the wound worsened. While returning from the bathroom at 6:15, he fell fainting, crashed on his couch. Dr. S. Rao and the moose, who were quickly called, gave him some coconut water and absolute rest. After 15 minutes he recovered. After darshan hour last evening, there was much activity outside the hall. Mrs. T, Mrs. M, Mr. B, Mrs. S, Mr. Balaram Reddy, and 1 or 2 others went into consultation, once jointly and once in small groups, and rushed here and there and to and fro for about 40 minutes. I knew there was something brewing. Later I learnt that they had sought permission to call in the Kaviraj, and that the permission had been granted. Immediately a telegram was sent to him to Calcutta to start for this place without delay. The moose's treatment has stopped. March 27th. Maharshi is suffering from persistent nausea and cannot retain even water. There is no appetite, and urination is very scanty. The tumor is now as big as a coconut. March 29th. The Kaviraj, who arrived at 10 a.m., today gave the Maharshi his first dose diluted in milk, Sri Maharshi's weakness has become so pronounced that since last evening he stopped sitting out for darshan. Devotees are now twice a day made to pass his door and bow to him in queues formed in the garden below the passage near where his sofa used to be placed during darshan hours. Systole fell to 88 and diastole to 60. The Kaviraj gave orally 2 or 3 more doses during the day. April 5th. Yesterday, Monsieur Cartier-Brazin, the expert French photographer, took a photograph of Sri Bhagavan, which may prove to be the last one of him. Maharshi's health has remained more or less stationary since about a week. His nausea and scanty urination have not been persistent, yet there has been no improvement in his general condition, which continues to prevent his coming out for darshan. Yesterday morning, His Excellency the Governor of Madras, the Maharaja of Bhavanagar, and his wife had Sri Bhagavan's darshan in the small room, then worshipped in the ashram's temple, inquired after the 2 white peacocks they had presented some weeks back and left. 6 p.m. Till now Sri Maharshi has not passed urine at all for 24 hours. The tumor is spreading with masses of cauliflower-like heads. The Kaviraj left yesterday for Calcutta, after keeping directions and medicines in the hands of the local Kaviraj, Dr. Parashurama Iyer. April 6, 1950. Symptoms of definite toxemia have set in Maharshi's body. For the whole day his urinary secretion did not exceed 1 ounce. The rate of his red blood corpuscles has fallen to a new low, and his intake of nourishment is not worth mentioning. Dr. Parashurama Iyer came to see me and told me that he asked the Sarvihikari to call in the Kaviraj's assistant from Calcutta, for I do not agree with the medicines left with me by him. The Tambara, copper, basma, which I am asked to give, is, I feel, far too strong in the present state of Bhagavan's health. I have given a very small portion of it and fear to give more as directed. I do not want to bear the consequences of such strong medicines, particularly as they are not prescribed and prepared by myself. The case is hopeless. So they wired the Kaviraj to send a competent man. April 7th. Sri Maharshi is slightly better. He is less drowsy today and is voiding urine from time to time. He has ordered his attendants to offer him nothing for which he does not ask, saying, "If I want water, I will ask for it. You are not to remind me." He is given 6 times a day the Kaviraj's medicines in liquid form which he finds irksome to take. "What, again medicine?" he would exclaim when given again, and whatever liquid medicine he ingests he declares from the quantity of the liquid nourishment. Liquid being the only form of food he now consumes, not that he wants deliberately to sabotage the doctor's treatment, but it is simply impossible for him to accommodate in his stomach more than he can conveniently manage. But if he is pressed by an unwise person to take a little more, he goes on a satyagraha against all food and medicine, and no man born of a woman can prevail upon him to remove the ban till it pleases him to do so, when he feels that the punishment he has inflicted by his resistance is commensurate to the pressure exercised on him. Doctors gently argue with him that scanty urination can be relieved only by an increased intake of fruit juice and water. And if I can't take it, he would answer, and there the matter must end. He leaves his body to manage its health or diseases as best it can, without the slightest effort of cooperation on his part. His mind is ever sunk in bliss. It is true that his body is suffering, but that is no reason why he should disturb his mind to oblige it. If it dies, well and good. If it remains, so much the worse for it. It is the business of him who made it to keep or take it away and do all the worrying. It is none of his own business to interfere and inconvenience himself on its behalf. The systole fell to 78, and the diastole to 50. Last night Maharshi felt too weak to walk to the bathroom. A commode was brought in for him, and he is using it. For 3 nights he has been suffering from severe headache. which the attendants relieved by pressing hard the head. It is reported to be due to the abnormally low blood pressure. April 9, 1950. Anxiety and grief are stamped on every face after the evening darshan. Maharshi is very listless, almost lifeless, and troubled by headache, hiccup, and extreme exhaustion. The Kaviraj's son arrived today. He looked very young, raw, and thoroughly incompetent to deal with a serious case like this. At 7 p.m. he gave medicine to Sri Maharshi. But at 8:30, Dr. Shankar Rao reported severe headache, pulse rate 100, systole 76. A conference was held between the doctors, the new Kaviraj, Sri Oman Durar, Chief Minister of Madras, a bank manager devotee, and one or two others. I hear the following conversation. Yes, do something, but give no internal medicine. I do not know. I am not a medical man, but give no internal medicine. Let the Kaviraj go on with his preparation, and we'll see. Dr. S. Rao, appearing worried. Yes, all right, let the Kaviraj prepare the external application. Kaviraj, it will take 1 hour to prepare, but if you have anything to give in the meantime, you may give it. Bank manager, yes, while he prepares it, if you, doctor, have anything to give, do give it. Dr. S. Rao, thinking hard. No, let him prepare the external application. He walks away. Devotees have the premonition that tonight is the night of extreme crisis for Sri Bhagavan. One by one they came, men and women, about 70 of them, and squatted on the east veranda of the hall in a pin-drop silence and in pitch darkness, listening to Maharshi's hiccup and whispering to the attendants. At about 10:30 p.m., the Sarvadhikari, coming out of his office and seeing the shadowy congregation, suspected the presence of lady devotees as well. He raised his voice in their direction and told them, Now rise, all of you, and go home, please. After some hesitation, all rose and quietly dispersed. April 10th. At a conference held at 3:30 this morning, it was decided to give up the Kaviraj and revert to allopathy. Telephone calls went to devotee doctors in Madras to come immediately with heart specialists. Sri Maharshi is so weak today that he is unable to make even 3 steps up to the commode in the room, nor use the bedpan. He tells the attendants, I do not want to eat or drink, so that I may not need to use the commode. If I take only a little nourishment, it will dry up inside, and I'll not need to rise every now and then. Besides, if I take more than 2 ounces, I feel as if I have taken a big meal. No, I cannot use a bedpan. His awareness is absolutely undimmed. Darshan was not permitted this morning, and when the Maharshi noticed it at 9 o'clock, he inquired into the reason why the curtains were not rolled up to permit people to see him, but he did not press the matter further. I later learnt that he had taken the authorities to task for having disappointed devotees from having darshan, with the result that in the evening it was allowed at the usual hour, 5 to 6. For the 1,000 devotees at least who had gathered for it, many disciples have been here, away from their homes for many weeks, knowing it to be their last chance of being in the company of their beloved master. The darshan queues, one for women and one for men, have to be controlled by dozens of volunteers from the ashram, who keep devotees almost on the run to give chance to all to have a glance of the Maharshi and make a quick bow to him within the prescribed time. I counted this evening 17 to 20 persons passing his door per minute. This darshan is no doubt a very great strain on the Maharshi, who in his infinite compassion keeps his face constantly turned towards the devotees the whole time the darshan lasts. His couch has east-west position, and the door through which he looks at the devotees faces south, so that for 1 full hour he keeps his head turned in that direction and strains his neck. In his present state of health, the strain on him must be great, yet he refuses to stop the darshan, or even reduce it to once a day. His nourishment consisted today of a little fruit juice, tomato juice, and some coconut water with glucose. April 12, 1950. 10:30 a.m. It looks as if we are on the eve of doomsday, the eve of a day on which we are destined to be deprived of everything we hold worth living for, our refuge, our hopes, our greatest treasure, the precious life of the Master. Today he is stretched full length on the sofa, with hollow eyes, sunken cheeks, pale waxy skin, and drained of vitality. 3 attendants are massaging his hard legs. The upper half of his body is exceedingly sensitive and cannot be touched without causing him severe pain. During the half-hour running darshan at 9 a.m., he could only at times turn his face to the devotees, but mostly he is listless. Doctors stopped testing and examining him and strictly forbade all access to his room. Everybody gave up hopes except the astrological fans, who pinned their faith to charlatans' maps, diagrams, and prophecies. The 2 top men in authority continue to wrangle with the doctors that Maharshi is curable provided the young Kaviraj, who is still kept here, is allowed to treat him, an argument which the doctors justly treat with contempt. Still, these 2 headstrong men would have overridden the doctor's advice and continued to harass Maharshi's unwilling throat with useless drugs before the overwhelming opposition which rose from very influential quarters against their stupidity. Women are weeping, men are dejected and brood in silence, for all feel this is to be the last day. Maharshi is still conscious and at times speaks, but till the last he asks for nothing, expresses no opinion on what should or should not be done for him, complains of no pain, except when lifted or touched in a painful spot. Then, and only then, as if to give a piece of information, he remarks, "There is not a spot which is not painful to touch." Then the attendants take the hint and use greater care in handling him, especially today when the pain is so severe. As a rule, the Maharshi, however ill he may be, never lies down when he gives darshan. On each of the 2 big operation days last August and December, he reclined on cushions, but today, out of excessive weakness, he lay fully stretched. At 8 p.m., Maharshi's temperature was 96, pulse rapid and thready, blood pressure 68/36, head heavy and aching, violent pain in the legs and thighs. When he is offered kanji, porridge, in the morning, he remarked, "Why all this kanji? Give me buttermilk," which they did morning and evening. He has taken also water off and on. Since some days he has been saying that dieting has spoilt his appetite and upset his digestion. It all started with the homeopath, who thoughtlessly restricted this, that, and the other item of diet to which he had been accustomed, and substituted it by his own, a vain fad. Next came the moose, who not only made more restrictions, but also gave medicines which are far from being conducive to appetite. Then followed the Kaviraj, with still narrower diet and more potent medicines, frequently repeated. Sri Bhagavan today remarked, "From the beginning I said there was no need for all this, but who listens to me? Now my stomach is so upset that it cannot retain anything, nor have I appetite for any food. My taste is spoilt, my tongue has lost its sensitiveness, and I am forced to eat and drink. How can I do it?" This morning a relative of his went in to see him. With all his ailments, Sri Bhagavan remembered that it was his, the relative's father's, death anniversary, for which he asked the visitor, "Have you performed the Shraddha ceremony today?" "Have so and so," naming the persons, attended it, which shows that he was not only clear in his mind, but also retained a very clear memory. When after dinner one of the attendants came in to take his turn, Bhagavan asked him, "Have you had your dinner?" Evening darshan was also an half an hour run at the rate of about 30 persons to the minute. It was again followed by the same dejection and anxiety as in the morning. Dr. Shankar Rao later told me There is no fear for tonight, for Bhagavan's body is not behaving in the way other bodies behave in similar circumstances. When we give it up, it continues to live. No man with blood pressure below 80/50 has the chance of living long, and Sri Bhagavan's body has been below 80 for more than 10 days, and today it is 68/36. Abnormal, so we can't say. At 10:15, the headache was extremely severe. The attendants pressed and vigorously massaged the heads and the legs. April 13th, 1950. Tamil, New Year, 2 p.m. Morning observations. Maharshi's diastole climbed up to 46, but the systole remained stationary at 68. Pulse 94. Temperature 98.4. Normal. What an irony. Breathing 22 per minute. Morning darshan ran for half an hour, during which Maharshi's eyes remained closed, and when he occasionally opened them, they looked in front rather than to the left where the devotees were filing past him. His diet consists now of only buttermilk. 10 p.m. Owing to the very heavy attendance of visitors from all over the south, nearly 1,500, the evening darshan had to be lengthened to 45 minutes. Many devotees remained till late in the evening to receive the final medical oral report for the day. At 9:30, Dr. Krishnamurti, a local physician and a great devotee, walked up to me and said, "My own impression is that there is no immediate danger. Bhagavan has just told the attendants to go to sleep as he himself was going to do. His breathing is not labored and there is no gasping in evidence." Friday, April 14th. Maharshi is in a very precarious condition. The whole morning has been spent by devotees in hushed gloom and with bated breath. After evening darshan, the unanimous verdict is that it is positively the last. The master is now propped on large pillows, almost in a sitting posture, the head resting backward with open mouth, and two attendants briskly fanning him to enable him to breathe freely. The battle for air has thus started. At 7 p.m., oxygen is administered to him for about 5 minutes, but seeing it gave him no relief, he feebly asked that it should be stopped. The situation was tense. About 500 devotees were outside in sad expectation of the solemn last moment. Blood relations, ashram workers, a few old disciples, and some new aspirants went in by turn to have a last sight of him. When the end was known to be approaching, the whole congregation with one voice started chanting the Tamil hymns he had many years ago composed in praise of Lord Arunachala. Arunachala, Shiva, Arunachala, Shiva, Arunachala, till it came about 8:47. Many devotees, grief-stricken and beating their breasts, lost control of their feeling and rushed en masse to the small room where the sacred body lay. But the police officers immediately cordoned off the area till it was brought out and placed in the center of the big darshan hall in yoga asana for all people to pay their last respect to it. The news spread like wildfire to the town and the neighboring villages and drew huge crowds. By 9:15, the crowd grew so thick that it became necessary to give chance to all to pay their homage and pass the body in an orderly manner. The queue was thus formed, 7 to 10 broad, at a quick march pace. It is still continuing unabatedly at 11:55 p.m. Around the sofa sat dozens of disciples, some chanting Maharshi's verses and other devotional hymns, but the others remained in silent contemplation. Sandalwood paste and jasmine flowers now cover the body, and incense burns by its side. At about 9 p.m., Monsieur Cartier Brazin, the French photographer, who has been here for about a fortnight with his wife, related an experience of his to me. "It is almost an astonishing experience," he said. "I was in the open space in front of my house when my friends drew my attention to the sky, where I saw a vividly luminous shooting star with a luminous tail, unlike any shooting star I had before seen, coming from the south, moving slowly across the sky, and reaching the top of Arunachala, disappeared behind it. Because of its singularity, we all guessed its import and immediately looked at our watches. It was 8:47, and then raced to the ashram, only to find that our premonition had been only too sadly true. The master had passed into Mahanirvana at that very minute. Several other devotees in the ashram and in town later told me that they too had seen the telltale meteor. April 15th, 1950. Many devotees kept vigil the whole of last night by the side of the sacred body. Some snatched a few hours' rest and returned early morning. The singing and chanting of Vedas continued throughout, as did the queue of worshippers till 11:30 a.m. today, when the body was taken out to the south veranda for puja and abhishekam. Sri Niranjananda Swami, the Sarvadhikari, assisted by his son, Sri T.N. Ventakaraman, poured over the sacred head dozens of pots of milk, curds, buttermilk, orange juice, mashed bananas and jackfruits, coconut water, etc., followed by many bottles of rosewater, attar, perfumes of all kinds, and sweet-smelling oils. Then enormous garlands of fresh roses and jasmines were placed around the neck and strewn all over the body. The samadhi pit was dug 10.5 by 10.5 feet and 7 feet deep. In its center, the masons isolated a small area of 4.5 by 4.5 feet and surrounded it by a wall built of granite stones, lime, and cement. The remaining portion they filled with many cartloads of sand, said to have been brought from the sacred Ganges and Narbada valleys. At 6:30 p.m., the body, which by then had received the homage of not less than about 40,000 persons, was carried in a decorated palanquin reserved for the deity of the temple to the samadhi. Here it was placed in the same yoga asana into a bag made of the finest kadar, which was then filled with pure camphor and lowered into the small area reserved for it. Then the pit was filled to the brim with camphor, salt, and sacred ashes to protect the body from worms and rapid disintegration, enclosed with masonry work. The crowd was so intense that 20 policemen were hardly sufficient to control it. Mr. Kaikobad, a Parsi devotee of the Maharshi, last night happened to be on the terrace of his house in Madras when he saw the meteor, to which Monsieur Cartier Brassen and others referred last night, and intuitively associated it with the Mahanirvana of the Master. And without warning for the morning, he immediately hired a taxi and came at top speed. Miss H.P. Petit, who is sitting on the balcony of her house in Bombay, about 1,000 miles away, also saw the shooting star at that fateful minute. At once guessed its meaning and wrote to a friend of hers in Benares that the Maharshi had passed away. April 16th, 1950. All the English and Tamil papers which arrived this morning from Madras gave wide publicity and banner headlines to the passing of the Maharshi. They also referred to the meteor which had been seen in the sky all over the state of Madras, hundreds of thousands of square miles, at 8:47 on the night of April 14th by a large number of people in different places, and reported to the press. These eyewitnesses had been struck by its peculiar look and behavior, which led them to ascribe the strange phenomenon to the passing of a great spiritual soul. Such a mass of evidence speaks for itself, if evidence need be. The end.